Hello, everyone. I'm Anthony Gallegos, alongside IGN's reviews editor Dan Stapleton.
That's me.
And we are checking out the Company of Heroes 2. Well, it's technically a closed beta, but you can get into it really, really easy. Like liking them on Facebook will get you in on it. But it's the multiplayer beta for Company of Heroes 2.
Wait, back up. There's a Company of Heroes 2 now?
Yeah. I know. We never thought it would happen. Trust me, it was one of the most exciting announcements. When Dan said that, actually, I had to check myself that I wasn't living in a dream world. Yeah, it's one of those things that I pretty much never expected to happen.
I think this is a favorite, or the original is a favorite of both of us.
Yeah.
For RTSs. It's actually one of the highest review scores I've ever given out in my whole career.
Yeah, I mean, I never thought that I would get that into an RTS as multiplayer as I did with the original Company of Heroes, and I think as you'll see as we continue to play, through this, this is a replay, by the way, of a match I did. I just figured it'd be easy to talk and show things in that way, but you do. I think it's because you have so few units to control, but you get to micromanage them. Like, there's a lot of micromanaging that goes in on StarCraft too, but it's on such a scale that it's a little overwhelming for me, and I feel like this is more my speed.
Yeah, the pace is much more deliberate and kind of tactical. Not to say that StarCraft isn't tactical, but the decisions you're making have to come at such a pace that you don't get to think about it as much, and your units die much more quickly. In this one, you have a chance to actually save your units.
Right, and so Relic Entertainment, the guys that make this, with Dawn of War, they've gone increasingly away from base building. In this, there's still very similar base building going on. You actually still tier up, build through the bases. One's an infantry building, one's for light vehicles, one's for tanks. So it's surprising as I continue to play Company of Heroes 2 how much of it is actually really familiar to me. You can still queue up orders in the exact same way that you used to. The only difference is that now by capturing points, you don't actually have to sit there on the point. You can just be like, you'll see the proximity here, and you can just be close to it to capture it.
Yeah, so you can have your guys in cover, and and most of it isn't like heavy cover that's there by default. You can build cover.
They do typically put cover now around capture points of some sort for people to fight by, or at least close enough that you can usually have someone that can have an advantage. Like, yeah, there's like a light sort of cover from a hay cart.
These guys should probably get to cover.
Yeah, exactly. So he does start to run them to cover. And the thing about the Russian soldiers is that they conscripts, the guys that you have early on. There are 6 of them versus these 4, but they're not the greatest infantry.
Right,
the Russians definitely use swarm tactics.
Right. The Russians are the Zerg, basically.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, yes. And one of the early things you can tech up to for them is Molotovs, which is like such a traditionally sort of stereotypical, I guess, Russian army sort of thing that you'd see.
Well, it is. Molotov is a very Russian word.
Yes, yes.
And Zanovi, probably Russian. So one of the things about the base building in this is that none of the units actually come out of the base.
No.
So the placement of the buildings is pretty much irrelevant.
Yeah, it's mostly just when they run in off map, are your buildings going to get in the way?
Right. So it does still have base building, but the base building is so kind of abstract. It's not even really. Like if it were just a single building and you just push a button to upgrade, it wouldn't really be any different.
Yeah. One of the things, sorry, just to take a quick aside, is that instead of capturing points now that like it used to be, where this is a fuel point, this is an ammo point, it's more like you build onto them what you want it to be.
They have both versions.
Right.
So originally we've seen this evolve throughout the development of this game.
Right.
Originally they were doing a thing where there was no
around it.
Right. So there was no predefined ammo or munitions or fuel points.
Right.
But you would capture some and then build on top of that.
Right.
The type of resource you wanted to get from it. Now they have kind of a combination of both.
Right. This one is a pre-established ammo point, but this one was nothing, so I built it into a fuel point.
Right. So that gives you more flexibility for how you want to build your army, which is kind of cool. I like the compromise.
Yeah, I mean, it makes certain points on the maps, like these 2 ammo points, can be super strategically important, but then you can augment what you need based off of smaller points on the map.
And we should is your force here the Russians or the Germans?
I'm the Russian side,
okay,
yeah. So any of the units you see on the minimap that are blue, those are mine.
Right.
And I find that so far the combat does go through sort of the typical phases where it's like, early infantry sort of skirmishes kind of define it, but then once people start teching up to mortars and stuff, it becomes a game changer.
Mortars in this are absolutely vicious. Like
yes,
way,
they are. Like
way stronger
right here,
than they were.
those guys just got completely annihilated
yeah,
by a German mortar team.
I've mostly been skirmishing against the AI. I've played like a couple of random matches, but mortars in the early game are just absolutely brutal.
Yeah.
I've had them one-shot entire squads of conscripts.
Yeah, I mean, the Russians in particular, like the Germans still have a little bit smaller of a mortar, but the Russians in particular have a 6-man mortar crew when they build a mortar, and it is a ridiculously powerful mortar.
And I don't know if I like that. Like we were saying earlier, one of the things I like about the pace of this is you have a chance to save your troops.
Sure.
And if they're all wiped out by a single mortar strike, you have no chance.
Yeah, I mean it's a little tough. I'll agree with you. Like I think but occasionally, like if they're in cover, like that time I got hit by a mortar, I lost one guy. There is a little bit of randomness that I think people sometimes don't like to come in Heroes, where if the mortar hits on the edge, because it could,
right.
It could
mortars
kill one guy.
Mortars are very inaccurate, but
when it hits, man.
Yeah, when it hits, it absolutely destroys your squads, and it is completely random, and they're such long range that it's really hard to keep track of, like, wait, why did I just lose that whole squad?
Right. And one of the things that you might have seen right there is that just like the previous company hero, you can still crew weapons like that. I stole a German mortar there with my conscripts.
They've actually made that more of a factor, because like vehicles will more often become abandoned or damaged, and then you can bring in an engineer and repair them,
which actually allows you to
vehicles.
get enemy vehicles, which is crazy. Yeah, you'll see a little bit of that. So you might have noticed Blizzard approaching. This is obviously a big thing. You get a countdown clock here that plays into multiplayer now. You'll notice these little fires that are built, and your engineers can build them too. They're typically around capture points, though those can be destroyed intentionally if you want to deny someone like a heat source. Mm-hmm. When the blizzard rolls in, these temperature sensors here, well, you saw it briefly there, but now it's gone because they got near the fire. Eventually it'll count down, and if they're exposed to the cold, they will literally die from exposure.
Yeah, and that only happens on some maps.
Right.
And you can pick whether you want to play on a map that has this or not. But it seems to me that on the ones that it does happen, it really encourages vehicle tactics.
It does, because if you're in a vehicle or if you're in like a troop carrier, which is something I would never use in the original Company Heroes, it was like so worthless. The only reason you would ever use it is if you're reinforcing guys from it, a unit, but you would never use it to actually transport one. But in this, it's totally worth it, because transporting guys in that means that they're safe from cold.
Yeah, you can see the temperature gauge on these guys here.
Yeah, buildings also will save you from the cold, which can be really crucial. So it makes actually denying someone a building kind of important, and they've added like realistic, or I guess more realistic flamethrower attacks on buildings where it'll actually start to burn them down, so you can deny people.
Can you zoom in on these guys real quick?
Yeah.
It's really astonishing to me how detailed these RTS units are. Like if they somehow made a mode where you could get in there as a shooter, it would probably look better than a lot of like World War II shooters from maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, the fact that like when guys get hit and stuff, they're not always dead. Like they actually have like animations lying around wounded and in agony, stuff like that. Destructible cover.
Yep.
So rad.
It's fantastic. Just the level of detail in Relic RTS is absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I'm gonna disable the fog of war for just a second, so you can see like this early part. You can see this initial area, which is like the center capture point. By the time we get towards the end of the match, it is a very different sort of setting there because of the terrain deformation and the destruction to the surrounding buildings. Little things like these fences and stuff really get a pounding. Everyone generally kind of retreats during a blizzard too, because your bases, even though there's no heat sources like readily there, they just offer heat.
Right.
You're safe.
And you're able to use the retreat command to get your guys quickly back there.
Yeah.
If they're already suffering, you can get them there quickly.
Yeah. I'm trying to move my guys in during this time. The Russians also have a much larger machine gun crew. Everything they do just has more people attached to them. Moving them from point to point basically to kind of get heat.
I really do like what they've done to differentiate the Russians and the Germans. And even though effectively those forces were not that different, they've done a really good job of making them play differently.
Yeah, like both sides have a machine gun that they can take and set up for combat. But the Russians use like a Vickers, and it has such a tight.
It's a much more narrow cone. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's more mobile than and easier and quicker to set up than like the Russian MG42.
The German.
I mean the German MG42. Although I guess if you captured one, you could have a Russian MG42.
Yeah, you absolutely can.
Yeah, see this is one of those gigantic, much larger. Or no, that's my captured one. Yeah.
Yeah, you should bombard them. Like just bombard. Oh, you are. How about that?
Yeah.
I keep forgetting you can't actually do anything.
Yeah, I'm in the replay mode. But I was. See it right here is where I saw those guys. I probably should have pulled, or the AI should have pulled his conscripts back.
Right. The yellow guys are your AI counterpart.
Right.
Your teammate.
I mean, you can still do AI matches. They've enabled that in the beta, which is a great way to learn. Like I was doing it because it's still a little intimidating, even with as much experience as I have.
Oh yeah, like I hadn't played Company of Heroes in probably a year or two. At least I played like the first couple levels of the campaign, I think. But so and that's really nothing to prepare you for jumping back into a skirmish. So the first few times I got pretty badly beaten by the AI, and it's just a matter of getting your sea legs again and finding remembering how to build up your armies. But it actually has a pretty respectable AI.
It does. Yeah, I actually find that the standard AI is a good learning challenge for me as an experienced player. One thing we haven't really addressed is that, earlier the commander trees popped up, so you have 3 commander profiles, which really break down into like when you had like the British tree, you would pick between like the airborne tree, or in the Americans you would pick between like the airborne tree or the armored tree or the infantry tree.
Mouse over these guys, those abilities, yeah.
So I picked one that specifically the one I picked was geared towards having a new rifle guard infantry, which is nice because they have a unit that has an anti-tank rifle in it.
Right.
But I more specifically picked this one because I got to bring in a T-34, and like to me that's so iconic of the Russian forces, because that was the tank that kind of helped them win the war.
There's there's one of the command trees that I was using a lot. I forget which one it is already, but it had it let me build a stationary gun.
Right.
Which I'm kind of a defensive player.
Sure.
So I like to dig in and build some good defensive emplacements around my captured points, and that was a fun one. That one had some long range bombardment.
Yeah, I mean, I guess they really do allow you to adapt to your playstyle to a large degree. Like this one I picked also because you get the 120mm mortar squad. Like I didn't end up building them because I was spending all my manpower on tanks. But those mortars, that's like a massive bombardment. Like that's such a good one. But it's also still mobile to a degree. I also liked this one because it allowed my tanks to do a little bit of self-repair. And they have all these new symbols that pop up that at first I was like, what does that mean? Like this right here. But it's just that it's kind of telling you what it's like effective against and what it's weak against in one symbol. Like so in this case, this symbol means effective against most targets, weak to anti-tank guns and anti-tank weapons. So I guess that's just like something you can keep kind of in the back of your mind as you do this.
One thing that worries me a little bit about these commander abilities is, I mean, that's almost certainly where they're going to do DLC.
Yeah.
And like that could potentially be, that could have an effect on the balance. And I know that the idea is to provide options and not power.
Right.
But in a manner of speaking, options are power.
Totally. And the first Company Heroes, I mean, they had problems with exploits and balance issues like throughout the game. Now they were always really good about patching them, but I could definitely see that becoming more of an issue as they add more commanders.
Yeah. Yeah, and like now that it's a Steamworks game, like those patches will be much easier to handle. It was a real nightmare in the original Company of Heroes the way they were patching that.
Yeah.
But now that's gone away, so that's not as big a problem. You'll get the patches right away in a painless way. So I don't know, it could work, but it is something that worries me a little bit.
Sorry, I paused it real quick, only because we haven't really addressed the whole thing that they refer to as the buzzword of true sight. They've changed the way that like sight works, and this is actually a really good place to show it. It used to be that a unit just had 360-degree visibility around them, whether a building was away or tree or anything like this. So this tank, I was kind of just going on a rampage, killing all these guys, but as I came around the corner, I actually had my visibility open up down this road, and that's where I got surprised by an anti-tank gun, which is why I immediately had him start backing up. But I love stuff like that. Like the sight thing in this it seems kind of like I've already lost sight of them again. And in Company Heroes 1, that wouldn't have been the case.
Yeah, you could see through things, and now you can't.
Exactly. So right there, I kind of pulled back expecting him, but didn't see that there's actually going to be another anti-tank gun moving up out of my flank, and like stuff like this car will sort of obscure it. as it's moving into position.
So it just opens up a lot of possibilities for ambushes.
Yeah.
Before, the only way to ambush somebody is to keep your units out of their sight radius, and now you don't have to. It's a lot easier to close the trap because you don't have to close that distance.
Right.
You can just have somebody pop out from behind something. I guess there are also like ambush abilities. Like I think the German anti-tank gun had a camouflage ability.
Right. If they don't fire for a certain amount of time, they'll go temporarily invisible until they fire their first shot.
Yeah.
So as you can see in this middle part, already gotten a lot more destroyed. Now there's an abandoned anti-tank gun there. Stuff like that is always really, really tempting to me.
I like how the Russians, their conscripts have the ability to reinforce other squads.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
Yes.
So instead of having to truck out and the Germans still do this, they truck out a half track that reinforces their troops. Like magically, it's like a clown car where they've got they just destroyed that fire.
I know that was actually a really brutal moment for me because these guys can't get into buildings.
Right. So you have the Germans have a truck that they bring out to reinforce their troops. The Russians, you just build an extra conscript squad and then send it to reinforce like a machine gun squad or even a sniper squad. You can send them out and merge the squads. And since there are 6 people in a Russian conscript squad, it's not going to reduce it to nothing. So you can then just send it back to base and reinforce that squad and then bring it back out for more.
Yeah, it actually makes the Russians, in particularly so far, like really effective at taking enemy equipment too.
Mm-hmm.
Like because it is a 6-man squad, you can send off a few just to capture a weapon, retreat them, and still maybe like kind of hold a point or capture a point. Yeah. So another blizzard hit. Obviously, I retreated most of my guys because it's actually kind of a godsend in a way that there's the blizzard sometimes because it allows you to have a brief moment of reprieve where you're like, okay, once this is over, where are we going?
But what's your tank doing now?
Well, I have a tank that's just sitting on this point in case anyone tries to capture because this victory point is mine at the moment.
Right.
So as far as I'm concerned, like he can just hold that. He's not going to be affected by temperature. These guys are in kind of a little standoff here temporarily.
One thing that always cracks me up about multiplayer Company of Heroes is like you look at the map and you see like, oh, the enemy's got all these points. How am I going to take them? He doesn't have enough men to guard them all.
Right.
So like being bold and going out there and just scouting and trying to grab a few or grab a couple at once, you'll probably get some. It's not as intimidating as it looks.
Yeah, it definitely allows you to sneak in and grab a point, but usually the enemy's going to react to that.
Yeah.
So it creates.
But then you can use that as a diversion
skirmishes.
and go somewhere else. And again, if you attack in multiple places, it's going to really confuse a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, we kept on trying to fight over the center victory point all the time because the side ones kind of kept bouncing back and forth. I kept on coming out here too, but I kept on blobbing my infantry, which was kind of a bad idea. But
yeah, when there are mortars in play, that can lead to bad things.
Yeah, we haven't actually had a really good chance to see it, but when vehicles destroy too, one thing I've always loved about Company of Heroes is that there is like a sense of permanence to it. They aren't just they don't just kind of vaporize away from the environment. Like this one's a pre-made, pre-baked one into the environment. But there are other ones, like this car, that was a scout car that just got blown up. And now that is a piece of cover on the terrain that can be destroyed or can be used by players at will.
And I don't know if you can still salvage from those.
I don't know. That was something the Germans could do. I don't know if I actually haven't seen if that's something you could do for like a little bit extra resources. This battle was still me trying to learn things that it was a little tough. I gained another command point. And it's interesting in this one that in the old one, you picked a tree and then you had like a tech tree that you would put points into as you went along. In this one, it's literally just if you level up high enough, you get things. They just auto-tier for you. So there's no more choosing after the initial commander tree choice.
Which is kind of nice. Like being able to just make one choice and then not have to worry about it is better than having to pause and go back into that menu and sit there for a while.
Yeah.
It's better for pacing.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree.
Now that system, I guess it harkens all the way back to like Command and Conquer 0 Hour or General 0 Hour. Like that's probably the roots of that. And I think like Command and Conquer 3 did a similar thing in its Kane's Wrath expansion, where it's basically just a bunch of different variants of the same faction.
Yeah, these units are one of my new favorite German units. This is that guard rifle infantry, but the ones that actually have a gun that can be used somewhat for a little bit of anti-vehicle, like these gigantic rifles you see them wielding. Like, it's not necessarily going to wipe out an enemy vehicle, but you could maybe, I mean, maybe it could if it's low enough, but it's great for like maybe disabling an engine, causing a little bit of trouble for them.
Yeah, and there's just so many times when you go up against a tank and all you've got is some infantry, and you're just the bullets are just bouncing off.
Right.
So it's not like they're just like a tank is a big blob of hit points and you just can't whittle it down fast enough. It's like you are not doing any damage at all.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's why there's always been ways that you could upgrade a unit to, say, give them anti-tank grenades or something like that. Something that they're likely not going to kill it, but they can slow it down.
Or like in good numbers, you can burn through a tank.
Sure. But that tank could also, fire one shot and blow up 5 guys.
Yep.
You don't know.
Well, looks like that tank took a beating.
He did, but you can see the tracks of the people that kind of tried to come in and
those tracks do not go the other way, do they?
No, they don't. Someone came in, they did not leave. But again, I paid for it.
But yeah, I really like the snow effect, so you can see those tracks now. That's kind of amazing.
Yeah, and when people move through high snow, it's actually it's a detriment. I mean,
they slow down.
Yeah,
so you're encouraged to stick to the roads.
Exactly, but it also allows you to do things like mine roads, because tanks will naturally drive towards roads unless you tell them not to.
Right, so it's a little bit of a bottleneck.
Yeah, I mean, man, this area is just getting pummeled. Mortars, artillery. We basically turned this into a no man's land. Moving his infantry right up to get right in the face of the mortar squads.
Yeah, I do find that's kind of an issue with the AI, is that it doesn't respect personal space. And arguably that's kind of an issue with the way this game works, because they can do that. Like in reality, you would never walk. Soldiers would never walk past each other. They'd just shoot each other and they'd be dead. And this, because they do have that durability, you can just basically walk them past the enemy and surround.
Yeah.
It's not free. I mean, it will hurt you. But it was really annoying when the AI was constantly doing that and getting on the other side of my cover, which negates it.
Sure. This tank is actually the first tank where you'll kind of see that issue with a vehicle becoming abandoned.
We're also seeing German infantry level up with experience.
Yeah, experience. Yeah, I have this unit leveled up too, which in the case of the Russian infantry, gives them the ability to basically do a battle cry that reinforces other people around them. So,
I think veterancy is a bigger thing for the Germans than it is the Russians.
Yeah. I mean, these level 2 veterancy engineers with a flamethrower are definitely a threat. Like against us conscripts, it's not even a contest.
Yeah, the flamethrower I find is a really effective means of finishing off an injured infantry unit.
Yeah.
Because in this game, a lot of success is about knowing when to retreat, when to bring your infantry home and reinforce them without actually losing the whole squad, because that's much more expensive to replace than just replacing a few guys. So the flamethrower is very good at finishing off that squad.
So that vehicle, instead of blowing up, there's a chance that it'll just be abandoned, and then you can move in with the unit and capture it. But even when you capture it, it's on death's door, so you need to have engineers there to
fix it up.
Yeah, get on it. But that was immediately so cool to me. I came after it, even though that the Stug 3, it's not the best tank, but to me it was just so enticing to be able to have a German tank even when I shouldn't.
Yeah, and that creates just something new to fight over on the battlefield.
Yeah.
So you've always got all these capture points, but now you've got an actual thing that you've got to race to get to and before the other guy does. Hey, free tank.
My veterancy rifle guard infantry barely made it back, just one guy.
Nice.
But I like that the Russians have the ability to basically build these medics at the base that will help patch up your guys as they work.
Actually, now that I think about it, I think Command and Conquer 3 Kane's Wrath also did a lot with abandoned vehicles. All the major units allowed you to do that. You could disable a GDI Mammoth tank, and then Nod could take it over. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's amazing how I mean, it really is a rock paper scissors game, right? I noticed that the Germans had gotten a lot of their anti-tank guns kind of wailed on, so I just cranked out this little medium tank, and even with just it, I was able to wreak havoc, especially during this blizzard part, because a lot of their units couldn't be out.
And there he destroyed a fire pit.
Deny that fire.
That's just being a jerk.
Yeah. It's just funny because like even something like a medium tank that isn't all that powerful can become really powerful if they don't have like an anti-tank sort of weapon to kind of cause havoc.
Yeah, and especially when all the infantry has to kind of hide in this blizzard, it's really effective to use armor, which almost feels a little unfair because armor was pretty powerful to begin with.
Yeah, I mean anti-tank crews can still be fine in the cold. So like these guys are here and they're not affected by the blizzard.
That's true.
So they're okay. So you can still keep those like set up on key roadways if you think they're going to try and do an infantry push. I guess the conceit there is that maybe they're hiding behind the gun. I don't know, something to help them get through that. But yeah, I mean we definitely used this time where the infantry had to pull back to push up. I'm pushing up with the medium tank. He's pushing up with basically the ability an artillery gun.
Yeah, I like those tanks a lot. They are good long range bombardment. It's kind of the vehicle equivalent of a mortar.
Yeah.
And plenty powerful too. And although those can also hit tanks, which is a major factor.
Yeah. I mean they're basically mobile tank guns, but you can use them like artillery. The bad thing is that they're open topped, and open topped vehicles can definitely be taken and stolen easier. Like they're more vulnerable to like flame damage.
Yeah, flamethrowers are the bane of those.
So you have to definitely watch it with them. But see, he's using like this line of sight breaking basically here to hide from these guys, and then when he comes out in the corner, it's kind of like oh my god moment.
Yeah, except he did not
see that anti-tank gun was going to be there, right?
Yep.
And there you go, abandoned vehicle. They could take that if they wanted. I don't think they ever do though. Meanwhile, I decided
hopefully that's something the AI will learn to do by the time the game comes out.
Yeah. I mean, and it's certainly not AI. The players definitely will. But again, this battlefield here, man, it's just gotten totally wrecked. All those fences that were here, they're just gone.
This is why we can't have nice things, Anthony.
No, certainly not in a time of war. So this is where I decide I really want this tank. But the engine is still destroyed on it. So now all it does is it just moves at like the most painfully slow pace forward because it's in such bad shape. I did not quite plan for that.
You have 2 engineer squads. If you look in the upper right there, you can see all your
dudes. I immediately saw that and started moving this one over to kind of get to them.
It's a long trip, though.
It is, yeah. And I can, spoilers, they don't get there in time. But the funny thing is that because this one gets shot like once and then it's out of control, it's not dead, it's just out of control, the Germans basically ignored it after that because it couldn't do anything.
Yeah, there's another pretty nasty mortar strike.
Yeah, I love the smoke and particle effects too. Like this area is just like there's a MG42 abandoned, a mortar, but it's just like don't bother going in there. There's another one abandoned over here. It's just a huge mess though. But
yeah, I think that's probably the biggest visual difference between this and the original is all the smoke and particle effects have gotten better.
Yeah, I mean the units and stuff. I would say like it's not like an incredibly dramatic difference. Though they have added certain animations. And one thing we haven't really had a chance to see as much on this, though it has happened, is that, units now can hop over small walls. So if they run up to a fence, they can actually just hop it instead of having to, like, painfully go around it, which was always an issue before.
And it's also handy for, like, if a squad shows up behind you, that negates your cover because they're shooting you from the opposite side of your cover. So you can just hop over there and all of a sudden you're in cover again.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be so bad that in multiplayer matches, if it was like really desperate, you might even like waste a grenade to blow out a fence because you were like, I just need to get through it real quick. Oof. Yeah, the bodies don't stay forever, but long enough to kind of show off how bad things get. Oh man, yeah, those guys just got wasted by a mortar. Obviously, some unrealistic things happened, like that guy that ran away eventually. He was actually not the flamethrower guy, but it always defaults the good weapon to like whoever's still left.
Yeah, and it's not a simulator.
No, it's not. I mean, they try and do a lot of realistic things, but there's a lot of conditions that they change just to make it. I mean, fun is the primary concern, right? So, at this point, the game's pretty much won.
I haven't seen a lot of like airstrikes in this one.
No, I mean I don't think either of us took it, and that's one thing in a Blizzard map you probably wouldn't necessarily want to pick a tree with airstrikes because airstrikes are disabled during blizzards.
True.
So that's like something to keep in mind. And most maps, if not all of them, I think have a spring level as well as a winter level. So you can play without the whole Blizzard thing if that's not something you want. But that, you know, the whole point of the winter thing is that it does change up tactics, like especially during levels with rivers.
Oh yeah, the rivers are, and they both obstruct your movement, and they like when you're on them, you're vulnerable because if you get shot, you might break through the ice and fall through.
Right.
Just lose the unit outright.
Yeah, that vehicle's going down.
I like the really slow, out of control vehicles like
these two that are just like, well, we can't really do anything. Like at this point, they're both just. That one's now abandoned, but it got blown up.
Really cool explosions, too.
Right? Like, and then the after fire effects. Like, it just. I did everything I could to save this vehicle, Dan. I really wanted it, but the problem was is that I was just getting wailed on by these guys, too, who are like Veterancy 2 engineers.
Yeah,
it was not going to happen.
I like how it looked like a couple of your engineers there just like ran into the tank and then fell down dead. I think they were actually shot, but
yeah. I mean, you know, tank units can be crushed by tanks, though it's pretty challenging to actually do that. The AI is generally smart enough to and full of enough self-preservation to run away.
Yeah, one thing I really like about the AI in this game, like the AI for your own squads, is that they are not completely dumb without your assistance. So they will, like, if there's cover right there, they will take cover.
Yeah.
And they won't go off and do something completely independently. They won't attack unless you tell them to attack.
Right.
Well, I mean, if something gets close enough, but they won't go off and do something.
Right.
But they take some steps to protect themselves.
Yeah, like all I did for these guys is I just moused and told them like head towards this cover, and then they kind of just dynamically did it.
Yep.
And all this has actually been created in the light cover because these craters provide light cover now, just because, I mean,
yeah,
they are craters.
So you're in light cover pretty much wherever you go in there.
In this area, yeah, in the space in the moon.
Yeah, like if you look at like StarCraft, for example, nobody does anything to protect itself other than just shoot back if there's something in range.
Yeah.
And to me, that's always been a little bit immersion breaking because they don't feel like they're intelligent.
So we're coming up on the end of the match, but we're going to be playing a lot more of Company Heroes going forward. Me and Dan are hopefully going to do some commentaries, maybe of a match of a versus, and we can walk you guys through why we did what we did. But yeah, that's kind of a quick look at Company Heroes multiplayer beta. You guys should play. As you can see, if you paid attention, I'm Yaddle Milk on Steam. I would love to play against you guys and get beat on and hopefully learn from you.
You're braver than I.
Yeah, for a lot more, we'll see. Maybe I'm going to regret that decision. But for a lot more on Company Heroes in the coming days, you should go to IGN.